And welcome back to another session. We saw lists. There are more lists. So we know for sure that these lists are going to be in your face for a long time. And there are other data types that we need to talk about. So in this session, let's just make this a little bit more interesting and let's just experiment with a few things. Some neat tricks that you will use right throughout your programming, hopefully, right? So let's look at this first part, right? We got a list of numbers here. This list can be totaled without running a loop over it by using the built-in function sum. Python has created this function and this function is already available to you, so you could pretty much just invoke it and store the value of that in total. So like print just generates an output, this creates a total and returns that value, and you will store the value. So whatever sum does, processes, it returns it back to you. So you can store it in total, and here we have printed it. So that's sort of a cool trick that you will want to total up something from time to time, right? So that's one thing you can do with lists. So that's a pretty neat trick. I didn't know this when I was learning Python, so I would actually write a for loop to get some total out of this. But here, this is a neat trick. Now let's see a couple of other things with lists. So here you have a list, right? And I add the number 89 to this, and I want to remove 415 from this, right? It's right in between. And let's see what happens. The result is there was 415 which I removed. Let's just comment that line and see what it results in. It will include the 415, right, which is here. But should I invoke the remove on the list? These functions are available on the list. So if you invoke the append, it will add the number, and if you ask it to remove, it will remove, right? So as we saw earlier, we just restore that line back, and now this one is removed. It's pretty neat, isn't it? That's pretty neat. So just because you make a list, it does not mean it is permanent, it's good forever. So you can actually modify it as you would require it for programming. There's a couple of other functions that might be useful to you. Right, now let's say you eventually move into a data science kind of a career, and as you are working on the project, you need to generate some kind of a data, right? A range of data. So what we are doing here is I created an empty list. I say I want numbers in a range up to 10. The range gives you a list through which it can internally iterate through up to 10. So it's starting with this. You'll notice from what we have done is we have taken this number I and multiplied that with itself. 1, 4, 9, 16. So you can see these effectively are squares, right? The same one number into itself, right? And then we last printed the whole list. So this is another way you can generate data synthetically for some kind of a testing purpose. You don't have to multiply this. You can simply add this. You can just leave that there, and there you see. Now what I did is I decided to do some mathematical operation, which is the multiplication operation with the star symbol. It's also known as the asterisk or the asterisk in certain parts of the world, and some people say asterisk as well, which is how it's actually written. Now coming back, there is one more type. Yes, that type is known as a set. We are all familiar about what sets are from our school syllabus, right? Here what we have is 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 3, 4, 5, 6, correct? So you notice that 3 and 4 exist here and here. So now what we are going to do is we are going to run this code and we are going to create a union between set 1 and set 2. So the union is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it did not, there are no 3s and 4s twice, mind you. This 3 and 4 happen exactly once. That's because you're making a set of this. That's how sets work. And that is a unique thing which we need to know about sets. Right. There are other nuances, but for now, let that be the way we think. For set 1, again, we are saying I need an intersection of set 1 and set 2. So what it gave me was 3 and 4. Like we saw, 3 and 4 are common here. And now let's look at the difference, right? What is the difference? For set 1, the difference is 1 and 2. 1 and 2, because you're asking of set 1, what is not in set 2? The same question applies here for set 2. You're asking set 2, please tell me what you do not have. The other way around, 5 and 6 are not here, so that's what sets are for. We will not go into the set theory and how sets and unions and intersects work at the mathematical level. The assumption at this point would be that you have your school level, probably 8th grade kind of a math, which will help you understand what the basics of sets are. If not, nothing to worry. This function would still do as we have just described here, and it would generate the result as we expected. So I hope that this is very clear. It can be useful, not very often used, but in certain scenarios when you're dealing with sets and looking at differences, there are certain mathematical operations that you need to deal with. In such case, it will be useful. Now let's look at taking a list. If you notice 1, 2, 3, look at that. So this whole thing has 2, 2, 4, 4, right? So now let's just run that. And we created a set out of that. It sort of intrinsically removed the duplicates. So if you notice that list, let's just do dupli list, right? So what it told you is that you ask Python to interrogate this particular variable and give its data type. So it says it's a list. Now let's just interrogate the unique element, which is this, and see what the type is. So it comes out as a set. So as you can see, this is a set, this is a list. You can also say C is equal to list function type of C, right? So those are different ways that you can go about creating things. Like they say, there are many roads, but all roads ultimately lead you to Rome. So just like that, you have some neat functions which you can use, can expand your capabilities. As in the roadmap of what we are going to learn, we will learn some data processing, some data engineering as we go down the line. But for that, these things like deduplication might be rather useful. There can be more complex ways to deduplicate, but for now, let's just leave it at that. And I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you think anyone will benefit, please share that with your friends, and see you in the next one.